Much as I love building them, it's very nice to finish them too. Well, my pickup rings have finally arrived. There was a bit of a mess up initially, and that what I was sent was listed as chrome, but is actually cheap plastic painted chrome, and they're frames. They're not quite what I wanted. I've got what I want now, these flat pickup rings. The brand of pickup that I'm using is called Oripure, and it's one that I hadn't heard of until recently. They make a number of different types of pickups, but these ones are a 4-wire humbucker, so you can do fancy things like splitting, which I'm going to for the first time. I'll see how that goes. And they have one rail and one standard row of magnetic poles. The control that I'm putting on, this is quite a cheap 3-way Telecaster style blade switch. I'll see how it goes. I bought a couple of these very early on when I decided to build guitars, because they weren't very expensive and they looked alright. I mean, from the outside they just looked like a normal Telecaster setup. I've taken off all the wiring. They had it wired up in a way that I didn't quite recognize and wasn't quite the same as any of my diagrams, so I'll do all the wiring myself. It's an unusual switch in that just about everything is done on the circuit board, and you just wire up, you solder on the hot wire for one pickup there and the hot wire for the other one there, as well as the ground wire. But in this case I'll be doing some slightly fancier things using this push-pull pot to split the humbucker into a single coil. When you're splitting a humbucker into a single coil, it's never exactly the same as a single coil, so I'm told, but it is pretty close. It does sound like a single coil. I once owned a guitar where you could split the humbucker and it sounded great, so we'll see how much success I have. So the wiring is done, hopefully done for good. You may remember, if you're a fan and for some reason you remember everything I've ever done, which is a bit sad, some years ago I made this jack plate for this guitar, and now I'm finally using it. Doesn't it look smart? Well, the wiring is all connected and I've plugged it into the amp. Let's just see if I have a signal. That would be a yes. We're approaching the finish line where it becomes tempting just to leave any details that you might have overlooked just in the name of getting it done. There is something that I will need to remedy here or I won't be happy, and that's the resin in this lightning bolt F-hole. So when I put the resin in and the top cured, the surface cured, and I sanded it flat with the body, it really did feel like one nice smooth flat surface, but in time I can feel that ridge there, and I've sanded it a couple of times and that ridge has reappeared. And you might not be able to see this because I just cleaned it off a few minutes ago, but just there appears to be a crack because I've just scratched out some stuff that is seeping out. There is some soft resin in there that perhaps was mixed wrong, didn't cure fully, so I've got to get some of this out. I've got to get most of it out actually. So I've drilled down here, and sure enough, some of this is sticky in my hands and some of what's come out of there is fairly tacky. And not just because I've warmed it up now with the drill. So that's all got to come out, or as much as I can get out. I'm getting there. I'm not showing you the whole process, but I mean, you can see what it is. Getting there. Most of it's pretty solid, but there is the occasional patch that's a little bit tacky, and that's what's giving me trouble. Now, some of the messier parts of various tasks that I do, I don't show you, But just to let you know how I'm going about this now. So I've hogged out most of the material, most of the epoxy that I need to get rid of with the drill, and just so that I can define the edges of the lightning bolt well. Oh, that's ready to come out. I'm using a chisel around the edge. You see, that's really tacky. That's one of my main problem areas. There was a tiny bit there as well, and a little spot there. You can see that in cutting away the epoxy from the edge of the wood, I've cut some of the wood, but that's okay. Once this is all out, I will file and sand the edge of the lightning bolt to make it look nice again. I was actually considering putting glitter in there, but at the last moment I decided not to. It might seem a bit gimmicky. So I've made up some epoxy resin just now, poured it in, and I'm just warming it with my heat gun. And what that does is it pops the bubbles, basically. Well, I actually ended up doing that a second time, removing the resin that I had put in. I think part of the problem is the temperature. I may have mixed up the ratios incorrectly. I did try, but the temperature may have been part of the issue. Epoxy resin doesn't cure if it's too cold, and it's no longer summer. So what I did is, with the third lot that I put in there, I put a heater on it overnight, and by the morning it was nice and hard. Each time it gets a little bit more rugged though around the edges. Maybe that's a virtue. There's not that much I can do about it, other than trying to cut a bigger lightning bolt, and I don't want to do that. See, look, part of me thinks that the rugged nature of it works a little bit as though it was kind of dug out by a claw or cut in with a pocket knife by a high school kid, maybe. But it looks okay. It looks okay. I did have a mishap earlier when I knocked a ladder over here in the workshop, and it knocked the guitar off the bench. Fortunately, the guitar itself doesn't seem to have been damaged, but one of the bushings has come out, and I need to either find that or replace it. I hope I can find it, because I don't have any replacements on hand. So that's in humbucker mode. And now the coil is split. It doesn't do it. Well, we're finished. There was a piece of work involved that I didn't mention until now. At one point during that demo, you might have noticed a stray buzz, which I was noticing, and it was annoying me. It was coming from the bridge pickup, and when I touched it, it buzzed. It's not doing it now because I fixed it. There was a wire that was not attached. The earth wire was not attached to the back of the pickup where it should be, so I've taken care of that now. But this is great. The wiring was a success. So here's the... Oh, am I in tune? So that's the the neck humbucker. Here's the neck single. See that slightly thinner, I guess a little bit cleaner sound. And I'll do the same for the bridge. Here's the bridge humbucker. Definitely, well, not quite the bridge, almost the middle, but you know, that humbucker. Very full, not quite harsh, but certainly more trebly sound. Now single coil. Much, much thinner. I think it's nicer actually. The humbucker is great for really distorted sounds, but I do prefer clean sounds with single coils. And I think the sound that's my favorite is the middle position, which with the humbuckers sounds like this. Which is is still okay, but with a single coil, it's just a very kind of stratty sound. Yeah. So I'm really pleased. I think this guitar has turned out well. Not perfectly. People sometimes ask me what my guitars sell for. I sort of have a price in mind for a guitar, and when I do that, I come up with a price that would reflect what I would charge for this guitar if it were perfect. That is, if it was what this guitar was supposed to be. And then I start subtracting money for flaws. So I don't know that the owner would regard this as a flaw, but I regard it as a flaw. The fact that this lightning bolt ended up with slightly ragged edges, which, someone might think is kind of cool. Someone might even look at it and think that was intentional. But as you know, I replaced the neck on this guitar, and it does bear the scars of that. But again, someone might think that looks cool, but you can see that there was work done, or at least it looks like a bit of a patchwork. If you didn't know that I replaced the neck, you might look at that and think, that's an interesting design. So little things like that do affect the cost. I haven't crunched the numbers on this one yet, but it isn't spoken for. And it might actually, I don't know if it feels as nice as any guitar I've made. Probably the nicest guitar that I've made, or the one that I think is the nicest anyway, was the Flame in Fur, if you've seen that one. That was really nice. This is similar in feel, and like it feels about as nice to play, maybe. Certainly looks cool. I'm just standing here praising my own work, aren't I? But I'm happy with it. We're not always happy with all the things that we've done in life, but I'm happy with my guitars. They're not bad, and they're getting better. So if you want it, drop me a line, leave a comment, and we'll talk about you buying it. At this stage, I'm only selling in New Zealand, which I know is a bit of a limitation, but especially with the COVID situation and the way that international freight is, but just in general, sending guitar cases overseas is not something I want to do just yet. I'll stop blabbering and let you get back to whatever it is you were doing, and I'll sign off until next time. Until next time.